This case is beyond strange. There is so much good in it that I can easily consider it one of Danganronpa's finest, hence this video, but I have a lot of issues with it. And the issues in this case bother me so much more than the more obvious problems in, say, case 3, because I know that this case could have been so good. There is so much good here, great character moments, lots of well-handled lead-ups to the ending, and one of the most fun trials ever. But I also think it's more disappointing, considering it's the big case where the main antagonist dies, and Nagito's case in the second game was so well executed, and with hardly any flaws at all. It's obvious that this case could have been so much better, and that made me a little conflicted as to whether I should make this video at all. But in the end, I decided to make it because it is really good, and I can rant about my problems here too. So, let's get going. The overall plot of this chapter, let's just say it leaves a lot to be desired. It has some great bits, like all Danganronpa chapters do, but... Okay. So we start off reasonably normally in the dining hall, having a chat. The chemistry between the cast that is left is really good, minus the tension between Kaito and Shuichi. I'm torn about their falling out in this chapter, because while I can follow it, it is a bit stupid. It's a popular trope across a lot of media to have two main characters fall out over something trivial right before the climax where they'll make up and work together again, and to see Danganronpa doing it was a bit annoying. Yes, I get why Kaito is slightly pissed at Shuichi for siding with Kokichi and going against him in the fourth trial, and yes, I get why Shuichi is pissed at Kaito for being angry over something he did to save everyone's lives and had no choice in, but come on guys! The whole shtick about Kaito averting his eyes and just straight up ignoring Shuichi is so stupid and goes on for way too long. And while their make-up moment by the window is really nice and all, they didn't actually address why they were angry at each other and just moved on as normal because there was danger. The only reason why I will accept this plot choice is because of Maki. Maki is so done with both of them for the entire time they're fighting, and since I felt the same way, I found this quite funny. And when she finds out that they were made up, she seems so genuinely happy and relieved that my heart broke a little bit for her. It was lovely. Anyways, back to the plot. We explore the new areas as normal and get some more, interesting, exciting big hints about the overall story, and oh yeah, they're fake hints again. I think, when it comes down to it, my main problem with V3 and with this chapter is the amount of time they spend on these fake fucking hints. In the overall plot of the game, we are on some sort of real fiction reality TV show based on the original premise of Danganronpa, and the overall plot of the season we're on is this meteor end-of-the-world space program thing. That's the info we get from the flashback lights and the other hints throughout the game, and I don't have a problem with having this. The creators of this fictional world need to have some sort of through line to entertain the audience and all. The problem I have is how goddamn in-depth and confusing it becomes. Like, oh yeah, you're all dead, but you're not, and there's meteors and a virus, and the virus is killing people, and the government want to save the human race by sending some ultimate students to space. But we refused, and there was a big organisation that wanted death of humans who tried to chase us down, and somehow we agreed to it, and then there's brainwashing, getting in pods, and fuck. Maybe I'm slow, or stupid, but trying to get a grip on this fake backstory, not knowing it was fake, and the pieces didn't really seem to fit together until pretty much this chapter, when so much more is introduced as well. It's just a clusterfuck. If, after all the time spent on this stupid fake storyline, you still have to have Kokichi info dump it all, maybe you didn't do a good enough job with the hints. So yeah, we have another motivational speech about fighting Monokuma, which we literally do not have a solid plan for. Like Sumugi says, well, we've tried fighting him before, what's going to be different this time? And Kaito's just like, yes, we'll do better this time because we'll have determination. Like, we had determination last time, Kaito, and more people, and we still failed. But we don't end up doing that because Kokichi gives us the Electro Hammers and we attempt that path to the exit again. I did really like the fact we did this. Bringing that back was such a nice touch. But then once we get to the end, we see the supposed outside world, and Kokichi gives his info dumpy speech about the plot and him being the mastermind. Already, this chapter is giving us some serious narrative whiplash. It goes from exploring new areas, to fun character bits, to let's fight Monokuma, to let's try to escape again, to a big info dump, to Kokichi's most terrifying evil face, to Kaito being captured and sleeping in bed for an entire day and contemplating the point of living. Like, pick a direction and stick to it. The fuck is all this? The really depressing entire day in Shuichi's room could have been much more effective if, there was anything to truly convince me that Kokichi was behind it and everything he said was true. It was clear to me that Kokichi wasn't behind it, and the only proof he offers to explain him being the mastermind is a remote control to control the Exisals. Like, wouldn't Shuichi at least be a little skeptical? It's fucking Kokichi, for God's sake. He's just shown you that he had Mew make him a ton of stuff that can interfere with electrical signals. Would you not consider that she could have made him something else? Oh, or did the fucking writing on the rock convince him? Oh yes, because only someone who is the mastermind can write on rocks, of course. It's just, this scene could have been so effective. It was almost effective, but my brain was just like, but it's Kokichi, the liar. And you just trust him now because... Well, then Maki manages to pull Shuichi from his depression hole by taking him to the dining hall. When it was Maki that showed up, I was really happy. Maki, in my opinion, really thrives in this chapter, and I'll get into that later. But then we get this oh so conspicuously placed flashback light, and again comes something I'm really torn on. Because when this first appeared, and the fucking Danganronpa theme music started playing as they brought up Hope's Peak, Junko, and Remnants of Despair, I was getting so damn angry. I had really been enjoying the themes of truth and lies in this game, and I found them much more interesting than the Hope Despair bullshit. And when they suddenly started bringing this all up again, I was just like, really? Come on, guys. But in hindsight, I get it, and I think that it's quite smart. Kokichi has managed to genuinely shock and confuse the real mastermind, and now they've made a stupid mistake. And this is well built up to in the second trial, when Kokichi tries to get the main suspects to argue and put them under psychological pressure until one of them slips up. So because Kokichi is being a confusing little shit, he's managed to put a hell of a lot of pressure on the mastermind. To explain the crazy shit Kokichi's been doing, the mastermind in their panic ends up pulling out the Hope's Peak storyline, which only further confused their plot, and was able to be their downfall in the last chapter, when the information they gave us in a rush is clearly contradictory. It's this bit that really points towards the actual ending and the unreliability of the flashback lights. But because it's smushed together with all the info dropping, it can get a little lost on first playthrough. So after all this, we get to where the actual case starts. We make our plan to rescue Kaito from Kokichi, and Shuichi scouts out the location and has his little chat with Kaito. Then the morning comes and we find the body. Oh, what's left of it. We investigate with what we have, Maki seeming really cold, distant, and demanding that Kaito is the one who's dead. And then we have the trial. And oh, what a trial it is. This trial is honestly one of my favourite trials. If you look at it separately from all the chaos and fuckery in this chapter, it's really fun, interesting, and heartfelt. The only problem I have with the trial in general is that in a few points it does seem like we're going around in circles. I get why the discussion always has to come back to who's in the Exisal, because it's literally the crutch of the whole trial. But sometimes we end up talking about the same things more than once and not getting anywhere new. And it happens too often to be overlooked, I think. But apart from that, I can't explain how much I love the premise of not knowing who the victim is and having the survivor hiding away in the Exisal, able to speak in both voices. It was so interesting to constantly second guess yourself as new information comes up and the Exisal jumps around. But I do think that the jumping around was the cause of the repetition in this case. The best bits, in my opinion, is where there's a long section where the Exisal is acting as Kokichi and the conversation can actually develop. It did get quite annoying that every time it switched back to Kaito, people would just forget the conversations we just had and be like, oh my god, is it really you, Kaito? It has to be you, right? There's also the fact that Himiko and Tsumugi literally contribute nothing to the actual debates, and Kibo isn't much better. It's pretty much just Shuichi and the Exisal arguing, with the occasional useful comment from Maki. But don't get me wrong, just because Himiko and Smoogie don't contribute much to the mystery solving, they do have a whole ton of funny moments, giving the trial a strangely upbeat and fun tone. For example, the little exchange Himiko has with Kokichi.
"'Cause I know you like me."
Nuh-uh! I hate you!
"But I like you."
Or the way she really grows to like Monokuma when he joins us. Oh, and also, Monokuma fucking joins our party? He joins in and helps with the discussions. I absolutely lost my shit when this was happening. It's so ridiculous and stupid, but somehow felt really natural, and actually went on to become quite sinister at the end, when it starts to dawn on Shuichi that we shouldn't have been working against the Exisal and with Monokuma at all, and that we made a really big mistake by doing this. It adds to the building pressure and conflict within Shuichi that whenever he solves a mystery, there are always negative consequences. For example, Kaede gets killed, someone who could have really helped people all over the country was killed, and the falling out with Kaito. It really adds some nice nuances to the themes of truth and lies, where the truth isn't always the best and lies aren't inherently bad. One of my favourite parts of this trial was at the end of the first half, when we start to realise that there was a third party involved, and that third party was Maki. Her weird behaviour suddenly made sense, and I thought that when she told her side of the story, it was really interesting. I loved her inner conflict in this case. I mean, it must have been horrible for her, so maybe loved isn't the best word. But it was really good. Just thinking about her development up to this point, with her fear of connecting to people because she thought she would inevitably cause harm, only to finally open up and get really close with someone, and accidentally almost kill them. It must have crushed her completely to realise that what she feared would happen has happened. Then she just reverted back into her antisocial start of the game persona, thinking that's all she's good for, and decided to just do whatever it takes to kill Kokichi. It was so tragic and heartbreaking. Also, the fact that Kaito, inside the Exisal, is so fucking good at playing Kokichi, I absolutely love. I know Kokichi wrote a script for Kaito to follow depending on the different outcomes, but Kaito himself said that he had to ad-lib and make stuff up, and he did such a good job. It was so interesting to me to think that even though Kaito hated Kokichi with all his being, he did know him really well. Right, speaking of these two, I'm going to go into some of the character dynamics at work in this case that I really love. I shall call them the two triangles. The main reason why I can say that despite all the fuckery in this chapter, that it is a good case, is because the most interesting characters at this point are all really involved in this case, and character dynamics that I've been building for the entire game come to their head here, and I think for the most part it's pulled off really well. The first character triangle I want to discuss is Shuichi's relationships with Kaito and Kokichi, and Kaito and Kokichi's relationship with each other. It becomes quite obvious from the game's early trials that Kaito and Kokichi each represent a way for Shuichi to solve the mystery, Kokichi being logic and facts, and Kaito being trust and faith. This kind of relationship to the main character isn't uncommon in Danganronpa. Take for example the first game. Makoto is influenced by both Kyoko and Byakuya in the trials, and in chapter 4, Byakuya cannot comprehend that Hina wouldn't be the killer, because he has looked at the case from his cold, unfeeling perspective. Kyoko points this out when she comes to the correct conclusion, proving that often you need to take human emotions and how fickle they can be into account. There is a similar dynamic in the second game as well, when Hajime gets stuck in between Chiaki and Nagito on many occasions. So, for this game, Kokichi and Kaito exemplify differing ways for Shuichi to go about solving the murder, and they are both right on different occasions. In the second trial, Kokichi corners Kaito and Maki, saying they are the prime suspects. Kaito has no evidence, but puts his trust in Maki and tells Kokichi that neither of them did it because of a hunch he had. Kokichi is completely stumped by this, but Kaito ends up being right. And then more recently, in chapter 4, Kokichi uses logic and facts to prove that Gonta was the killer, and no matter how unbelievable Kaito found it and how much he wanted to trust in Gonta, he couldn't do anything about it, and Gonta ended up executed. Although Kokichi is this game's antagonistic character, he and Shuichi have quite an interesting relationship. It's clear that Kokichi respects Shuichi a lot, since when we eventually find his room, the word trustworthy is written next to Shuichi's picture. And it really irks Kokichi when Shuichi ends up spending more time with Kaito and getting more and more pulled his way. This ending up with the childish way he tries to investigate with Shuichi in the 4th case. Kokichi probably sees Shuichi as the only member of the cast that is his equal intelligence-wise, and Shuichi always shows a sort of reaching to find out who Kokichi is underneath all his lies. Kaito's relationship to Shuichi is more clear in the main story. After Kaede's death, Kaito encourages Shuichi to believe in himself and do Kaede proud through the working out sequences, and the two of them end up being really close friends. But I think that in this game more than the others, they really look into the relationship between Kokichi and Kaito. They feel like literal opposites, with completely different personalities and views on the world. This leads to many fights, both verbal and physical between them, and all of this comes to a head in this chapter. Kaito and Shuichi have fallen out and aren't speaking for most of the chapter. Similarly, Kokichi is nowhere to be seen for most of the chapter, unless he's claiming to be the mastermind or giving us weapons. So to have a chapter where Shuichi is without two of his main influences, and then to have one of them pretending to be both of them, debating with him in the trial, was so fucking cool to me. But the main way these two contrasting characters really subverted my expectations is how they work together. Yes, Kaito didn't really have much of a choice, because Kokichi was blackmailing him with the knowledge that if he didn't help, Maki would end up being the Black End. But he fully went for it in the end, and I loved the thought of how much fun he was having in the Exisal pretending to be Kokichi. Some standouts I can't believe Kaito said are,
I'm gonna live till I die. I'm gonna laugh instead of cry. This is more for self-defense. Little Miss Cranky Pants would kill me if I showed myself.
You fucking asshole!
Ooh, Maki is so scary. Good thing I'm in this Exisal.
They appear to be two completely different people, but they both have the same goal. They are two sides of the same coin, and my god, if Shuichi wasn't such a damn good detective, they would have ended the game together, and I love that. The other triangle at work during this chapter is the friendship between Shuichi, Kaito, and Maki. This friendship warms my heart like no other. I've already said how much I loved it when Kaito started training with Shuichi, and when Maki was brought into the mix, it was just wonderful. This trio can do no wrong in my eyes. They don't really have a clear symbolic relationship that the people in the other triangle do, but I just find their friendship so wholesome. At the start of this chapter, the dynamic is off because of the Kaito-Shuichi beef, and Maki is so fucking done with them and tries to get them to make up at several points during this chapter. Maki has just about got to the point where she is really comfortable around these two, and is working her way to being accepted by the rest of the cast. And the fact that these two are just fighting for hardly a reason really ticks her off. I also wanted to point out the lovely little running gag in this chapter of Himiko calling Maki Maki roll like Kaito does. At the start of the chapter, Maki makes this face, so she clearly doesn't see herself as close enough to the rest of them for them to call her Maki roll. She's only just got to the point where she doesn't yell at Kaito for using that nickname, let alone anyone else. However, Himiko persists throughout this chapter in her usage of Maki roll, and by the end, when Maki is really emotionally vulnerable, she doesn't lash out, but rather seems to be really touched by Himiko using the nickname. It's a lovely way to subtly show not her being accepted by the group, but her letting herself become accepted by the group. The trial is an especially emotional one for both Maki and Shuichi because of their friendship with Kaito. Maki has also fallen for Kaito pretty hard, which makes it all the more heartbreaking at the end of the trial when he reveals himself from inside the Exisal. If I had to pick one moment in the game that makes me want to cry the most, it's Maki's breakdown at the end. She tries to revert back into her violent persona when Kaito is about to be executed, but then when he tells her to stop it, since he's gonna die of his illness soon enough anyway, she just cries. And it's so raw and horrible and heartbreaking, and I love it so much. While the chapter technically ends on Kibo losing his antenna thing, I think the moment at the courtyard would have been a better note to end on. After the trial, Shuichi goes to the courtyard, where the three of them used to work out together, to reminisce about Kaito and what he taught him. And when he gets there, Maki is there too. They both came back to this one spot after Kaito's death, and I think it's a really lovely moment, where they can reflect on what Kaito did for both of them, as well as be happy in the friendship they have in each other. And then it comes full circle when Smoogie and Himiko show up and join in with the workout. It's so wholesome and lovely. So overall, there is so much to like in this case. So many good character moments and funny gags and interesting mysteries. While to many people the switcheroo of who the victim was wasn't really a surprise. I mean, for me, the second I saw Kaito's empty sleeve, I knew it wouldn't be him in there. It was still nice discovering what actually went down, and the trial was really fun. This case and the chapter as a whole is a really important piece of the plot of V3 and leads really nicely into the final chapter. But I do find it disappointing that there was so much chaos and info dumping and distractions in this chapter that took away from some of the better bits. It's hard to not be disappointed, at least a little bit, when you think about how good it could have been, especially when you compare it to the 5th case in the 2nd game. But I do think the trial itself is a good one, even if the whole package could have been better. So hey, that's me done. Thanks so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back next time with my ratings of the cast of V3, which I'm really excited for. If you liked listening to my stupid voice for some reason, check out my other shit. I'd appreciate it. Thanks again. Goodbye.